Fact to start with. Okay, we're live. So, welcome everyone. So, this is a first. So, Darren got in contact with me recently and said, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had some local experts talk about local relevant things? What's more relevant than mortgage and housing crisis? Yay. Really exciting subject. Cheers, Darren.
Thank you very much.
See enough of that at the minute, I think.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, but I think, it is important that we've got, these, I think it's an amazing thing that you guys can kind of put your swords down for a day, if you like.
Couldn't find any experts, but we came in.
You came in. So,
There's no swords in it.
you have to excuse me for a second because I'm just going to make sure we're live across all the different platforms. So I'm just going to allow you guys to just introduce yourselves and your businesses, where your specialisms are, maybe a little bit about yourself and your history, and then most importantly, why you're doing this, why you care to have these conversations. And then I'll come back to start the conversation. That's all right. So do you want to start with Mr. Pescod?
Yeah, why not? Hi, you two. Darren Pescod. I've been with a mortgage broker now probably 20 years. Obviously, it does what it says on the tin. That's my game. And very, very relevant in today's market with all that's going on with high rates and concern and cost of living. So the reason for me doing this tonight is we get these questions every day to us, to our mortgage team. What's happening? What am I going to do? What does it mean to me financially? And being that it is so relevant, I thought, well, just make a team of people together, talk about what's happening.
Yeah.
I was going to try to label this, if Alex let me. You can't gloss a turd podcast, but that is where we are.
The conversation.
It's not all going to be positive news.
So I thought, let's get together, and if anyone has got concerns and they haven't got anywhere to turn or ask, we'll do our best to answer those.
And just before we move on, and thank you, because again, I think it's a great thing you're doing, and we need to do more of this as a community generally. If you are watching this live, please do share this to other communities locally. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn. So if you can tag anyone, if you do have anything you want to ask that you're not happy to ask in the comments, and you've got a confidential question you want to ask, then just drop me a DM on the live, or any of the brands that you see as a DM on the live, and then we can pick those things up. But yeah, I just want to say that before we move around to the
So I don't think, although we're doing it through the St Neots initiative, it's not the information we'll be talking about is not St Neots specific, really, is it?
Absolutely not. But it's the essence of the conversation. The intent for this is
To help the
local people talk about local things.
Sure.
So well done for doing it.
You're very welcome. And I invited these two lovely chaps, as they've both got specialist areas within the housing market, and hence you've got the three of us here with you, keeping you company.
So I'm the curious guy who knows nothing about this thing. So I'm the perfect person to ask the questions about it, right? So I'm just a very curious guy in relation to it. So and Jack, so let's go around to you, Jack. So who are you? What do you do? And why do you care?
So I'm Jack Pirie, myself and my brother. We own Pirie Homes Estate Agents for sales and lettings locally. We're based just in Eaton Ford. We're coming up to 2 years now in business. So November the 2nd.
That's gone quick, isn't it?
Really quick. I think for ourselves, I mean, we've been quite spoiled in the market we've been in since we started, because the market, as a lot of people know, that just went absolutely crazy. And I think the reason why I wanted to come on this evening is because we get a lot of the younger generation, if you like, asking whether or not if it's the right time to purchase, etc. Hopefully be able to get our views across in the right way.
Nice, welcome.
So,
brilliant.
Thank you.
And Tim, so welcome to your old office. I understand this is where you were.
This is, yes.
This is where you're born.
For those of you that don't know where the Shift Momentum Hub is, it's above Bohemia on the Market Square, and that's where we used to do all the back office stuff for my family business, Lovett Sales and Lettings, where we were known as Keys back in the 80s.
So what's the same business?
Same business, or same owners,
Yeah.
changed companies, long story, but I've been Lovett Sales and Lettings for a long time now. I joined in 2015. Mum and Dad obviously moving towards retirement or retired. We obviously we do sales and lettings, all things residential property really. We manage about 800 properties for rental stock locally. It's one of the largest, I think, in the area of independent businesses, and so I'll probably have more of a focus on lettings this evening, but chip in on everything where I can. I'm local, born and bred in St Neots. Went away to London and went away to university, but it inevitably draws you back. And
of course. The centre of the universe, man.
It's the centre of the universe. I think we can all see how St Neots is evolving at the moment. We've spoken about it a lot, Alex, in the past.
Growing incredibly.
You listen to me rant about it.
In terms of population, but also sort of culturally and the demographics of people that are moving to St Neots as well. I'm sure Jack will be the first to back me up that we're seeing people coming up from London, from Cambridge, from these big urban areas and we're benefiting from the skills that they bring as well. Whereas in the past, it felt like much more of a sedentary population that didn't move about quite so much. And
I think you've got a lot of those guys, interrupt you there, a lot of those guys moving here because obviously, you had the pandemic, which meant that a lot of the businesses in London, Cambridge realised that actually you didn't have to commute every day and work in the city, so therefore
you pay a lot less in rent or to buy a property.
And you open your doors and see this beautiful town we've got, which it is. We're blessed, really, absolutely blessed in terms of location and sure, not even just from a logistics point of view from where we're located, but also we're in town here. You walk across the bridge, you can just see the green. It's beautiful. It's nature's amazing.
And reason for coming this evening, really, we're seeing changing times at the moment. The last couple of years have been great for estate agents in terms of the market. It's been really booming through the pandemic, bizarrely. Starting to change a bit now, but we're seeing more and more questions being asked from tenants, landlords, buyers, sellers, just about what's going on, what's the best advice. And because you're in it every day, you take for granted the knowledge that you have, and you presume everybody else knows. Well, you also presume everyone cares, but they don't.
It becomes habit, doesn't it?
It does, and you talk about things, and sometimes people say, "Oh, right, okay, I didn't know that." And you think, "Oh, yeah, I guess you didn't, did you? Because you're not."
Yeah, we take it for granted what we know and what we see every day.
The mundane stuff that you deal with, other people don't.
90% of people won't know it.
Yeah. Well, that's frame of reference, right? We all have a frame of reference, and we all have a different expertise, and it's amazing that you can share it. So, just to get us kind of started. So again, welcome. I'm seeing a few people tuning in. I agree, Luke. It's good to be live again, mate. It's been a long time. Lynette, Donna. Christine and Henry, there you go. Christine and Henry are watching at home, which is nice. If you've got questions, please do chime in. But just while we move into that, from your point of view, and so from the conversations you have with your teams, from your frame of reference, coming back to your point, what's the general kind of feeling from a client's point of view and your team's point of view? What's it like because you must get some really hard, difficult conversations and things like that coming up. So if we start with you, Jack, then you mentioned it. What's your kind of general kind of point of view on the current situation from Pirie Homes' point of view?
I think where we are at the moment, it would be, I would say, probably similar to what I said about it. We've gone from a property market where as soon as probably go back to when the early days of the pandemic was, you had straight away, I think after they announced the lockdown, you had the stamp duty, which I think a lot of people bet the market just went crazy as soon as that was announced, and from then you'll probably agree to as well, it was just like complete crazy. The phone was ringing, you'd have 10 to 20 people at least viewing the same house.
Things were flying out.
Things were flying out the door.
And you're seeing it's being reflected in house prices, obviously.
It's reflected in and where we are now, it's just completely. It's not. I wouldn't say it's changed dramatically, but all you've got is the mortgage rates have changed as well now, and it has quite down just a little bit. People calm down a little bit because the fear of not knowing what to do. I think everybody's got the same sort of question at the moment. Is it the right time to buy? Do people do it now? Or do they wait and see if the market settles down, or the mortgages come down again, or in terms of the interest rates, if you like? That would be I don't think it's right.
So some confusion. Well, no, and that's fine. It's a perspective thing. So that mirrors society. So we'll come back. So we'll come back around to some of the specifics around that.
I think we've had since the Brexit referendum. We've had uncertainty. The thing the housing market hates is, as estate agents as well, is uncertainty. We've had that since 2016, 2017, non-stop with one
Chaos.
thing or another. And so nothing has settled into an obvious pattern. And we're now at that point, as Jack says, where we've gone from being really busy with things are noticeably changing now, and people are sitting on their hands. And for sales, I'd say this mainly for property sales. Lettings is a different beast. It's just going bonkers still. And people are asking advice. Is it a good time to buy? Is it a good time to sell? And it
depends on your personal circumstances.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's an easy get out, but it does depend on, do you need to move? Do you have to move? Are you looking for capital growth in your property that you buy?
What does your future look like?
There's a million different questions, so it's impossible to say. And when is the right time? When is the right time to move? There isn't really a perfect time.
So then if you go back to looking where is the right time to sell a house, well, actually, if you're selling a house, you buy and sell in the same market, so it's all relevant anyway.
Exactly.
Let's just sell to rent.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
We'll come to that. Okay, Darren, your perspective.
Well, for our clients, it's mostly concern, especially for clients that are coming back and refinancing.
I think the heat's on the mortgage side of
The
things.
heat is definitely on the mortgage side. I mean, people are coming out of fixed rates, for example, that have been starting with 1%, maybe a 2%, but most generally 1%, and they're coming now to look at new deals, and their new rates are starting with a 5 or 6. So with everything else that's going on in the economy, with the cost of living, and then adding a few £100 onto a mortgage that they can't really escape from, it's generally concern. And again, you asked about the team. I mean, that would also be the same. It's concern. What does the future hold for when you're in the cold face of mortgages, and people are either struggling to get mortgages or can't get the deals or the loans that they wanted. For me, concern would be the overriding emotion for our clients.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'll come on to some, because we've got some really interesting questions that we've kind of lined up that I think we need to cover. But we can't be here and not talk about mental health just briefly, because I know all of you, and as a service business owner myself, we have a responsibility when we're speaking to people. That is if someone doesn't watch the news or isn't in line with that, and suddenly they get a sorry what. So I thought I've been ringing you up, Darren, every 2 years or every 5 years, and just going and now I'm going from 1.4%, and you're telling me I got to get a 6. Sorry what?
And
that's hard, isn't it, to deal with?
Oh, it is, and with everything else we've got going on with the economy, adding a financial stress on top of that is a big concern.
Yeah. So how do you? And Tim, you're the same, because your team must be speaking. You guys got the volume of people, because you're predominantly sales. So the volume of the customer service part, the ongoing relationship thing. How much of responsibility do you feel as a business to make sure, from your staff's point of view, mental health, and their clients?
I mean, the mental health thing is a you can look before the cost of living crisis, and we have the pandemic. Try and find a business of any size that didn't have staff affected by mental health. Just the change in having to work from home, or doing this, doing that, working in skeleton crews. It was, it's not been great at all. So you're very conscious of that as an employer, and then you try to do what you can within your means to try to help and support your team. But then you've also, for us, we've got the service side. We've got people in our team who might be struggling, having to pick up the phone to people who are also clearly struggling and trying to appease them. And
it's the reassurance factor, which I think the people who are calling in for the advice
about being human and maintaining that. And I know you guys got the cultures that you all believe in that culture.
We have we didn't really talk about the letting side. I talked about property sales, but the letting side it's difficult for us, because we're trying to appease landlords and tenants, and inevitably it's not always possible to please
different animal.
Well, people say, well, the landlord is your client; they're the ones that pay your bill. Well, they are, but they only pay a bill if the tenant pays the rent. And if the tenant genuinely can't afford the rent, then no one's gonna win. No. And so we've had the issues through the pandemic, which I'll probably talk about later on. Pandemic, with people just not being able to meet the bills. They're getting furloughed, they're getting 20% less on their salary, or they're not being.
Well, even worse, if they're on a higher salary, they're knocked back down, because it's capped, wasn't it?
That's right. And then we had that, and then we've also got landlords who are having difficulties, and I know people will say get the small violin out for landlords, but actually a lot of landlords, I think I read a recent survey of 6,000 landlords, I think 57% of them are accidental landlords, didn't want to be landlords, but they've just fallen into that situation.
They went down that asset.
That's it. They maybe met someone that's also got a house. One of them
Inheritance.
It could be inheritance. A lot of landlords
are landlords at the moment.
Yeah, a lot of landlords. We're getting a lot of panicked landlords call us saying,
Wanted to sell.
pass it over, Jack.
Straight.
Giving us the opportunity, they're giving us the call saying, you know, my mortgage is exactly like Darren said, it was 1 or 2%, and it's going up to 5 or 6%, and these are often just interest-only mortgages.
Yeah, of course.
And it's going up 500 or 600 quid. I can't put that on the tenant.
It's not fair to
The rent's only £800 as it is. I can't put up another £600. Yeah, and so what should I do? And you know, they say I'm willing to stomach some of it, but I can't stomach all of it. What do I do? And it's actually a really difficult position to give advice on, because inevitably someone's going to have to end up talking about money.
So I'm going to bring it back round a little bit, and I'm seeing the comments. So I will come back to some questions shortly. Sum it up. It's confusing.
Yeah.
It's bit. You know, if we call it a crisis, it's a genuine. I would all agree it's a genuine crisis.
Yeah.
And you know, some of which we can handle, some of which we can't. But we've got to be human about it. Yeah. That's why we're here. So I'm just going to come on to some kind of general kind of questions, just as a bit of a quick fire round to get started. So nice and positive. I'm going to start with you, Darren. So firstly, are we officially in recession? And if so, how long do you think? Again, your frame of reference, your perspective. And I know I've been in your office. You've got a lot of monitors. You like to monitor this stuff, and you're obsessed by the market generally. What are your views on that?
Are we in a recession? Officially, no, because I think it's 2 quarters of minus economic growth to be officially classed as a recession. But for all intensive purposes, we are. If it smells like a fish, it is a fish. And if we're not officially in one, it definitely feels like it, and we will be going into one. What does that mean? I mean, it is really just a definition of where we are as an economy. I've got a very short-term memory. You have to ask me the second question.
So how long do you? And that is a really hard question because there's so many factors.
I think we're in for the long haul on this. You've got a lot of things that play out in the economy. You've got cyclical events. You've got asset bubbles, whether it's property, whether it's stock market, whether it's car prices, that are all at highs, and everything seems to be in a high or in a bubble at the moment. So for me, this is going to be quite a deep recession. It's going to hurt. I think it's going to hurt more than 2008. And please, I'll excuse my negative stance on this, but these are my personal views. I think this one's going to hurt, and for all the scaremongering and concern that people may see on the news, I think this time it is relevant. It's going to be long and deep.
Yeah. So yeah, when anything comes about like this, it's about self-awareness and understanding. So actually, as a community awareness, to say that doesn't necessarily mean we all have to struggle, and we can lessen that pain.
Yeah, if you can be educated about what we're going into.
Yeah.
For some people, and it's not going to be for everyone, there will be some victims in this, but for some people where we can help or they can make plans to try to alleviate some of the financial pain, then fantastic.
So there's an education thing here.
There is, but I believe there'll be quite a high percentage of people that just won't have the wiggle room to be able to trade out of this, get out of it. The majority of people, if you're sitting there on a monthly basis and 6 months ago you've got £300-400 a month left to spend to go out to save for a holiday, and that's what you've been used to having, and then you've got cost of living or a mortgage increase that suddenly takes all of that £400 a month away from you, then you have got no wiggle room. It's okay being business owners, you have your good and bad months, but if you are generally, if you're employed and what you earn is what you earn, what you take home is what you take home, and suddenly all that wiggle room is gone. Some tough decisions will have to be made.
That's honest and that's reality. I mean, anyone wants to chime in on that. around the recession or their general thoughts around it. But
Yeah,
is there a genuine thing of well, I'll be aware, educate, let's start talking about it.
yeah. I think from our point of view, I think Darren's right. If it smells like a recession, it's definitely a recession. How long it's going to last, I don't know.
Well,
It's just you can't
gamble, isn't it?
Yeah.
I do, but with property prices, which is often the big marker for us. I personally don't think locally in our area we're going to see a huge. You read in the newspapers about they're going to tumble 30%, they're going to crash, it's all going to nosedive, negative equity left, right, and centre. I personally don't see that happening in our local area.
Right.
I think St Neots is a place that people still want to invest in property, either from buy-to-let stance or people moving to the area to trying to get better value for money. We're surrounded by very wealthy areas.
Cambridge and London.
London, Cambridge, home counties.
MK's just become a city now. And
Yeah, and people are looking for places that they can afford and re-educating themselves on what they can do with their finances. And one of them is move to somewhere that's a bit cheaper. And St Neots generally has been that move for a lot of people. And I think
from their perspective, I think that's the key.
Yeah,
isn't it? 'Cause we
exactly.
funny enough, so relevant to what you just said. So we've just had Scott ask, why the house prices in St Neots are so high compared to surrounding areas.
They're not.
This is it. Oh, great. Here we go. Yeah,
Depends
here we go.
which
Yeah, no,
which
that's what you
direction.
can. Brilliant. Here we go.
I think obviously based in St Neots, when you look at some of the house prices in Newcastle, for example, just off the top of my head, then it's expensive here, but compared to Newcastle, for example, or up north, it's not.
So okay. So it's not. So maybe you come and give us some examples. So those Scott who asked that question, if you can give us an example.
I think it comes down to go back onto people's circumstances again.
Yeah.
If you're living in London, but then you're buying somewhere in St Neots,
It's a nice downsize and you get value for money.
Whoa,
Nice
blimey, I was
downsize.
living in a flat and now I've got a 4-bed house.
But St Neots,
and then
I think St Neots, who asked the question, it is relatively expensive. It's a beautiful town. It's growing. It's got decent train lines into London and to Cambridge, so you can see why.
Don't talk about buses. Not allowed to talk buses. I'm banning buses.
You can see why it holds a decent value, but it's not as expensive as some of these major cities. But yes, more expensive than other areas. It is catching up, but it is reasonably central, isn't it?
There's a lot of investment in the town. In some places, I wish they'd spend it. I won't get into that. But there's a lot of investment. There's a lot of interest in the town. There's a lot going on locally. So no, I'm happy with that. Well, am I happy about it? I don't know. But I'm happy you've answered your questions the best you can answer them. Okay, cool. So is it realistic? So let's get on to mortgages again. So I think
I'll take the line.
yeah, you have. Sorry, just a moment.
I'm quite happy if you take the line.
Jason, this is your first time on the line. So is it realistic to assume rates will be 5 to 6% as per price?
That's where they are at the moment. That's where they are at the moment. We've seen rates drop marginally over the last couple of days from a couple of lenders, but they were pretty highly priced anyway. So we've seen a couple of lenders drop 25 basis points, 50 basis points. But yes, where we are now, I think that is going to be the norm for a good 18 months, 24 months. If there is any movement, maybe that's 0.5%. Which way, I don't know.
Yeah.
Hopefully coming off, but you don't know. But this is a new level compared to
What drives that?
1.5%.
So what really drives that?
Inflation, the base rate. I mean, everything is led by inflation, and we're at, I don't know what we are, officially 10%.
Yeah.
It's not going to be surprising if it's a little bit more than that with energy prices. So it's all linked. I don't think there is an easy way out of this.
No.
I read today that with Rishi Sunak being in power now, it's steadied the markets a little bit, and
For a moment.
that any potential increase that we're going to have next month
Delayed the budget, right?
is
Delayed the
unlikely.
budget.
Delayed the budget, but saying that it's unlikely. Prior to him coming in, it may have gone up by another percentage point, but now that's scrapped.
Well, supposedly Bank of England are independent from the government,
Of course, yeah.
so I mean they will be making
So
their
that's
own
a fact,
decisions.
isn't
That is a fact. So they will be making their own decisions on the bank rate. But one of the things that they do use to calm inflation is by raising interest rates to stop people spending. However, this
Is that right? I don't know.
But it is in the past.
Yes, and that's the point.
In
Today's
the past,
different.
today is very
Yeah.
different. But that's the tool that the Bank of England have always used.
Yeah.
People are spending too much. Let's put up interest rates, stop them spending. But you're correct, Alex. Today is different because some of the inflation is stuff that's out of our control. Energy, for example.
Yeah, it is encouraging.
War, supply chain issues. This isn't general spending. Just costs have gone up. But that, I think they're between a rock and a hard place. I don't know if there is a solution for this.
We need it. We
Apart
need
from
some of
having a
that.
crash.
We need well, this is the thing, isn't it? But you have the crash and
And then you reset. And that's what a lot of commentators are talking about. And I am in that camp as well, unfortunately, that we do need to have a reset.
which is an opportunity for us to rethink some of those issues. So I was on the phone to a construction company just yesterday. They were looking at, I won't say who, but the east of England. They're looking at building about 70 homes, big commercial development, whatnot. They'd already lined up the kind of tender, the quotes, everything. They'd lined up the whole project about a year ago, 9 months. And they're due to start in November. And he said to me, look, we're not going to start now until April because a lot of my suppliers, where they've quoted, they're saying to me, look, I'm a bit wary because of the margin I've left on that, because of the inflation, because of the staffing issues, because of all the things you've just outlined there. They're actually just going to pause the activity. There's no clarity for businesses on energy. There was 6 months. I'm sorry. There was an energy crisis survey we distributed through the St Neots initiative, and thanks you guys for supporting getting out there to businesses. The response was quite horrific, frankly, because there's no visibility. If you as a business, you need forecast. You need to be able to plan for the future. If you can't plan beyond 6 months,
throw some uncertainty in there, and you can understand why people pause these decisions, especially when they're looking to spend money,
if you like.
But you're hopeful that 5-6% should be fair.
yeah, that's the real question. Yeah, come back to it
Am I
now.
for the-
Well done, Tim.
I would
I'll bring it back out.
Thanks, Tim. I've said to my team that this current interest rate of between 5 and 6, or even 4.5 and 6% is probably the new norm for the next 18, 24 months, and that's where we should get used to it.
Is that what it used to be? Like some time ago?
That
They
was
take you back to
10,
take you back a little bit.
10, 12, you're testing my memory now, 10, 12 years ago, yes.
So what was the market like then? So if you can give us a light back into that world, obviously that was normal. That was fine.
Ask if Darren remember 15%.
I can't remember the 15%.
But you won't like.
Yeah, but
the market was fine then. It was just
That was
relative.
the norm, but remember, house prices were probably 40% lower than where they are now.
So that then reduces the mortgage.
So where
reduces the
interest
cash
rates
flow.
were higher, mortgage costs were relative.
Yeah.
Now we've got very high house prices and very high mortgage costs.
And
That
general
don't go
cost
well
of living
together.
as well.
And
general
and-
costs
and-
Disposable income's just
A cocktail of something nasty.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Jack.
No, I was just going to carry on from that. It's interesting we hear maybe some of the older generation when they remember the 15%, but Darren's exactly right. The house prices were about 40, 50 grand back then, so it's completely different.
Yeah. So then it always comes back down to, but there's a rule in life for business and in life. Cash flow's king. And if if your mortgage is, like I said, you're borrowing less, so therefore it doesn't matter if the interest rate's higher. Okay.
That does help, yes.
Yeah. Fine. So interesting. So coming backwards may help a little bit, but then there's a question around negative equity.
Well, you said you don't think there'll be negative equity, Tim, but
So let's
Well,
see. So
again,
what's your
it's-
position?
the
What's your position on
situation is dependent on everybody's
It is, it's-
individual situation.
Yeah. Of course,
I
of
done
course.
some sums the other day. So look, if you're sitting there with a 40% equity in your property and house prices go down 20%, you're not going to hit negative equity. However, if you were a buyer in the last 12 months, for this example, and you put down a 5% deposit, which is pretty standard, a 95% mortgage, and you bought in the last 12 months, if house prices do decrease by 20% or even 10%, officially you will then be in negative equity.
Yeah.
If you bought 2 years ago, you probably had a 10% house increase. Let's say you bought with a 95% mortgage 2 years ago.
2019 market or something
Yeah,
like that.
you've had a 10 or 20% house price increase. So again, house prices need to decrease by 20% for that buyer 2 years ago to be in negative equity. But
So for a St Neots house owner, given the other conversation,
For the last
it should be
12
all right.
well, St Neots house owner that maybe purchased 3 or 4 years ago
It doesn't
and have
have a
built
huge
some
mortgage,
equity in, There won't
They
be.
may have not remortgage unless they like remortgage and stuff like that.
At the time where the prices just went sky high.
Yeah.
About a year
It'd be really
or so
interesting
ago.
to see data. Like, I don't know if you guys get to see any data, because you obviously, I don't know, is there any industry
There
data?
is
Yeah,
data. I
yeah,
haven't brought it with me. Sorry.
No, I don't know if there's if it's worth sharing, like, off the back of this, if there is websites that people, we talked about education earlier. I'm quite fascinated by this stuff, but maybe I'm just weird because I'm
I
like.
think Darren probably gets exposed to more of that information than we would.
Yeah, so is there public data people can educate themselves on rather than the press?
Yeah, there is
rather than
public
opinion.
data, so you can get data. It will show obviously the average house price increase, Halifax and nationwide.
Right,
Get
right.
the average house price increase if you were to buy a couple of years ago, or
About
get a valuation from these guys.
Yeah.
So you've got
Right.
that, and there'll be stats out there which I don't have
No.
of the size of deposit that people are putting down. But inevitably, if anyone thinks there will be house price decreases, and I'll put my hand up and say yes, I'm going to say 20%. It wouldn't surprise me if it's a little bit more, but I'm happy with 20%. Then if you've only put a 5% deposit down in the last 12 months, unfortunately, if that happens, you will be classified as negative equity. But will it hurt? No, because it depends what you then do with that
If you don't
property.
move house.
If you don't
Yes,
move
fine.
house,
You're going to stay there
and you're
for
riding
10 years or so.
yeah, and you're riding
Your
with
asset just
negative
becomes a
equity,
liability for a little while.
yeah, but it will ultimately go up again, whether that's a
Mm.
5, 10, 15-year term, who knows? So it only hurts if that person who finds himself in negative equity then needs to move and hasn't got the money to pay. So again,
Brilliant.
it's
No, great
it's
answer.
very individual.
You're right.
Circumstances again.
It's,
isn't it?
Darren's pulling up because it's not as easy as a sweeping statement.
No.
I don't think there'll be negative equity because everyone's situation.
And that's great, and that's a perfect answer. So I'm going to prompt you all. I'm going to prompt you all. I'm going to prompt you all now. In the coming weeks, months, you've got brands, you've got customers. You talk education. Maybe you could publish some of that content more on your pages and your social media to start that conversation further. So if there is a website you can look at, because I don't want to watch the news.
No, it's quite
But I want to.
That's why you've got me here to.
But that's
Obviously, we get bombarded with stats on house prices.
Exactly. Yeah.
Whether it's Rightmove, Halifax, Nationwide,
So
everywhere.
share some of that. I don't want to see the pies anymore.
I mean, generally we've been looking at about 12%.
Fascinated by them as well.
12% increases in the last year on house prices in our area.
There you go.
Similar previous.
That's really it's useful information because then people have got perspective and they can do something with it.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, cool. Okay, so should I wait to sell or buy? So this is a question for everyone. this is the it depends thing again. But
I think
should we wait? So here, okay, let's come back. Let's say that we had an example. We had someone write in about, and this is more mortgage again for a second, but it's relevant, the same thing. I'll come to you first, Jack. But their situation is, they've got 1.4% fixed rate mortgage for up to for another year. They've got 9,000 costs to get out of that mortgage. Do they pay the 9,000 and then go and fix rate on a 5 or 6%, or do they sell, or do they? And I know it's going to be depends, and I'm totally fine with it being a
That's a
depends.
question for Jack then.
no, that's Darren.
No, but let's start there. But
So what should they do? Okay, it depends. So whenever we look at a client that has got a redemption penalty, and is concerned about securing a rate now just in case they go any worse, what we have to do, and rightly so, is we have to build in that penalty to see if it is worthwhile. I mean, if somebody goes from a 1.5, I'll use simple figures for this. If somebody's paying £1,000 a month mortgage and they want to secure at a new rate and it's costing them £1,500, is it worth paying £9,000 for the privilege of that? Again, it's
Take a long time to catch up.
It takes a long time to catch up. So whenever we look at client circumstances, we take into account all these figures, the redemption penalty, and we can't make that decision for them because it's everyone. It's a risky, and you do need a crystal ball. If rates go up substantially and they've secured a better deal now, then yes, maybe it's worth it.
So again, it kind of comes down to
Futures.
circumstance again.
Yeah.
Huge.
So And I might say if you've got what you could do with 9,000, maybe you could start a side hustle, make more income to offset the loss. It's not all about savings. You can make more money.
Yeah.
Side hustles. Get the side hustles in.
That is
Anybody
the
who's
general
done side hustles?
Yeah, speaks to our listeners.
They're also assets,
But that is a general
Better
concern.
outcome.
I mean,
Yeah.
we have seen a lot of clients in that exact
Yeah.
situation. Their redemption penalty or their current mortgage deal may be coming to an end in
Because the
February,
noise,
March
everyone's
next
like,
year.
oh,
Yeah.
no, panic mode. It's like,
So it's a question that's asked a lot more, but we look at it properly and each case is on its own. But in regards to selling and buying, which is these gents' game, I'll give my spin on it if I.
yeah.
if
Do you
I-
sell
if I
or buy? So
may.
based on all the conversation, though, the question being, would you sell or buy?
If I was selling and buying, as Jack rightly said, if you're selling in this market, whether it's a high market or a low market, if you're selling high and buying high, it's irrelevant. If the market's low and you're selling low and then buying low, that's also irrelevant because you're in the same marketplace. So that's how I look at it.
Or if you're selling high and downsizing,
Moving to a different area.
Cheaper area.
We can't lose any more people. We need them. We need staff. But yeah, go on, please. Yeah, well, what are your general viewpoints on that? Because you must get questions. That must be the question you get asked. Like,
Yeah.
do I sell?
I mean, I was talking to.
Well, without the estate agent hat on.
No estate agent hat on.
Yeah.
I'll ask you the question then, Alex.
Yeah.
So if you went back 6 months ago when I think you sold.
I sold, yeah.
Now I'll go through, but
myself.
Yourself. But what I was going to say is, if you're buying in the market 6 months ago,
yeah.
As soon as you put a house on the market for sale, pretty much any house was getting anywhere between
Stacked up like that.
Stacked up.
Cookies.
You're then competing against 6 other people wanting the same house. 4 people have offered on the same house, and then you're then paying maybe a slight premium because of the demand.
Yeah.
You're feeling maybe a little bit anxious because you're up against the competition for the same house.
Yeah.
Or would you rather buy now, where there's maybe not so many people looking
Get
at
better
the
price
house?
now, surely.
Better price now, but I think it takes the maybe the worry or the pressure off of trying to compete with other people to buy that house.
So it's a buyer market.
I was just about to say it sounds like it's moved to a buyer's market
Yeah.
more than a seller's market.
It's starting to come round.
Yes.
Yeah, which is it's about time.
My fear. I don't know
It's
if
been
you,
like with sellers for a while. Right?
Yeah.
it's been hugely my fear, and I don't know if you two guys see this happening with a buyer's market and with confidence now. With any investment, whether it's stock market or property, confidence is a big thing. We have this herd mentality where news and negative people do start stepping back. Is that we get to a marketplace where people make offers, they get completed, they get accepted, and then 5 minutes before they're supposed to exchange, which is where you're contractually obligated, you get to this silly bugger type situation, which I think we probably saw 10, 12 years ago, where I was offering you £200,000, Mr. House Seller, but it's now 185.
Yeah.
And I can see that happening all over again. Gazundering, is that what it's called?
Gazundering.
Yeah.
That's the word for
the
it.
opposite of gazundering.
The opposite.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. So where people say, they say, actually, I don't think it's worth that now.
And
Just as you're about to exchange.
and as a seller, you're getting squeezed a little bit, aren't you?
You don't want to go right back to the drawing board, put your house back on the market, and you're probably at a lower rate, at a lower level than you were getting 6 months ago.
Especially
You've got
if
to
the
buy.
stage is right. Exchange contracts.
Yeah, you've done all your legals done.
It's
You've paid your
stressful,
costs.
isn't it?
Yeah. So I foresee that happening again. That's unfortunately human nature. Some people do it on purpose to play the game. Some people just do it because it just feels the right thing to do because it's happening in the marketplace, and which is not a great situation to be. But we as providers of selling houses and mortgages, it's something that I think it will happen, and we'll have to get used to in our daily lives again.
And we have seen a little bit of buyer's remorse as well.
Ah,
People that exactly the people that Jack was talking about 6 months ago, who perhaps got into a bidding war on a house, when it got a little bit happy with it.
Yeah.
Almost sort of panic buying, wasn't it?
Yeah,
And then
interest rates are
thinking,
still not
interest
too
rates
bad.
were low,
It's like, actually,
Yeah.
I will go 10 grand above that.
They just want it. They just got to get it.
Yeah, and they can afford it.
Oh, my
because in-
experience, I'm like, sweet. I was like, well, it's worth that. Yeah, go take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might be held on a pedestal, actually, Alex, because you might have found that you probably sold at the highest peak.
Well,
in
I like to think
2022. It might be bowing down to you.
Well, I like to monitor the economy
Yeah,
of a macro. I'm more a macro.
Jammy.
Might be, yeah. I'm more of a macro.
Word, yeah.
I would have done it actually. I wanted to do it a year before actually. So yeah, but I was definitely lucky. Luck comes into it as well, you know. But yeah, I was pretty happy with it. But you know, it's also again it's circumstance. You know, my circumstance was that you know I've got other ambitions, other asset classes that I'm interested in. That are a bit more stable than property right now. You know, I just think personally, I just think property's been on a pedestal for a while in terms of as an asset class. There are other asset classes, and other people are being more educated on what those things are now. They're not just as some of
Just bricks and mortar.
yeah, and that's you know the new economy, and that's fine. And property plays a different role in that economy, which is fine. So it's just it doesn't change the game. People still buying and selling houses. We all need houses, and that's fine. It's just a different landscape, which is great that we can talk about it. I think it's great. Okay. So let's move on. So let's go over to landlord side of things. So fixed rates are ending. Big increase in rates and monthly costs.
Yeah.
How much can I realistically and legally pass on to the tenant? Now you touched on this earlier. There's a moral side of this question, and there's a business side of this question.
Yeah.
So I want you to touch on both sides of that, if you can.
I mean, morally, just think everybody's struggling at the moment.
Yeah.
Everybody's disposable. Majority of people's disposable incomes have been squeezed in the last 6-12 months. So from a moral point of view, just bear that in mind. Especially, so this is the advice I give to landlords: if you've got good tenants who have been in a long time, always pay their rent on time.
Yeah.
Don't cause you too much grief. You know, fairly straightforward to deal with. If you've got good tenants, they're worth their weight in gold. They really are. Even if you're going to miss out on getting an extra 50 quid a month on the rent from them, there's a lot to be said for having good tenants.
That's a no-brainer, isn't it?
Well,
Rather than
you'd think
taking
so,
a higher rent,
but
having a tenant with a lower rent that pays regularly compared to getting an extra £100, £150 a month, that just takes 1 month of non-payment or 6 months of non-payment. Stick with a good tenant.
Yeah, exactly. Or some landlords might say, well,
their circumstances have changed again, perhaps.
Yeah, the landlord can say, well, I can't afford it. And then you could say, well, actually, then you need to sell the property. Majority of landlords that have come into, whether an accidental landlord or an investor, it's there to make money. It's inevitably still there to make them some money.
Yeah.
If it's making a loss, and you can't cover the new mortgage rates, you can only bear so much on the shoulders of the tenants. And unfortunately, it's time to sell up. But
is there a question then about an approach? Just to again come back to what's good business and what's being a good human to have a decent conversation.
I think you still need to bear it, regardless of how much you want or need to put the rent up by. You need to look at the current market values.
Yeah.
You know, look at what the current rents in the local area. In St Neots, they have gone sky high as with anywhere else. But you know, they're still at a certain level, so don't look to increase them hugely. I mean, because tenants will just move out anyway, so go and find somewhere that's cheaper. And then they move out, or if you decide you want to serve them notice and get new tenants in at a higher rent.
Yeah.
Either way, if you have a period, as Darren said, you
lose all that profit.
You might have 1 month where the property's empty. You just want to get it redecorated or get it clean or what have you. It might be 2 or 3 weeks, get it remarketed. You've got a property that's £1,000 a month in rent, and it's empty for 1 month while you get new tenants in. You're down £1,000, you know.
We've seen landlords, if you've seen the same, Tim, that are in the market, and I think the government put a push against landlords probably 7-8 years ago now, trying to get the first-time buyers back in the market, and landlords are being squeezed. Yeah. So we've seen some of our landlords with portfolios looking to sell out.
Yeah.
You've got landlords now that can't offset their rent against their mortgage cost, so they're paying full tax on that. Their mortgage cost when they're coming to refinance sometimes is the same as their rent, and then you're paying 20-40% on your rental income. You can understand, landlords are in this for business or for their pension pot. You can understand why they're looking at the current environment and saying It's just not viable.
And then you've
For
also
some.
got the again that last 5 to 7 years squeeze on landlords from a legislation point of view,
Which is huge.
It's crazy.
which is from one point of view is great because they're trying to improve living standards for in the
Which it
private
needs
rented
to.
sector, which it needs to. It's always, for years, lettings was always seen as the dirties at word, or the dark art in property. And it's a million miles from that now. And the government have been great in terms of getting standards of living up for renters, but that has come at a cost for landlords. So they used to have their margins, there's certain margins, like you said. Now they're getting squeezed on various things that they can offset against tax they can't, but they've also got to fork out for this, they've got to fork out for electrical checks, they've got to fork out for smoke alarms, they've got to fork out for carbon
Energy
monoxide alarms,
certificates.
energy certificates.
If you've got like,
Lots of
is
different
there
things.
so like HMOs and stuff? Do they have like fixed? They manage the energy, right? So the cost is the landlord for the energy.
It depends.
And they have like a fixed
quite often
rate per room, or
quite often they'll put the bills in.
Right,
the
fine,
energy
okay.
bills into
let them figure out themselves.
Yeah, it depends.
That might going to cause problems for someone. Energy's
Yeah.
causing problems for someone.
Yes.
Someone's got to pick up that bill.
Yeah.
Okay, let's stay there. So let's move to the tenant side of things and the residents, like a citizen mindset. Here.
Sorry, just quickly. First part of that question, you said how much can they put the rent up by?
Yes.
Legally.
Yeah.
Legally, they can put it up by as much as they like, but the tenant has to agree it to be able to continue the tenancy.
Interesting. Okay.
It's guidance, not law. It's guidance from the government that the landlord doesn't put the rent up any more than once a year if they're on a fixed term contract. So if you're in a 6 or 12 month tenancy, you only really put it up once a year maximum. But if you're on a periodic rolling tenancy, the landlord can do it as much as they like, but obviously the tenant has to agree it.
There's a mortgage angle on this as well with tenants.
Of course, yeah.
So landlords in the past, when they've purchased a property with a deposit and a mortgage, there's always been what's known as a stress test. So a mortgage lender would base their lending. There's a few bits of criteria, deposit, income, etc. as an applicant, but one of the largest pieces of criteria that a mortgage lender would look at for a potential landlord is what's called the rental stress cover. Now, 8 months ago, if said property in St Neots was attaining £1,000 a month rent, could probably get 150 grand mortgage based on that £1,000 a month rent, based on the calculations that used to be prevalent.
Right.
In today's market, that £150,000 that was an offer 6 months ago to a landlord is now down to 120,000
Right.
based on the rental stress
Really?
test. Yes.
Wow.
Which is huge. So that will put off
A lot of time as well.
ridiculous. So more or less overnight.
Yeah.
So that would put off a lot of new landlords. It doesn't answer that question specifically.
No,
but
no,
it
it's
would
a
put off
factor.
a lot of landlords going into the market.
Yeah.
So for me, what will happen on the bigger picture as we see landlords looking to offload properties because it isn't the investment that they thought it would have been, that will put the pressure on house prices.
Yeah.
There is a plus point to this.
Mm.
That will put the pressure on house prices, and as I've said, I expect them to fall 20%. So you've got this pressure of people selling because they don't want to be in that business anymore. But there will be a time, and this is the crystal ball that none of us possess, whether that's 2 years, 3
Don't worry,
years,
it's
5
recorded,
years.
so.
We'll look back at this. If those house prices do come down because there's now stock coming on the market, so there's all these pressures, that may well be the time with stamp duty incentives that first-time buyers can actually then afford to get back on the market because house prices have dropped even though interest rates are a bit higher.
That's really positive. Conversely, from the letting side of the point of view, we're at the point now where we've got the lowest stock levels in the private rented sector we've ever had.
Really?
Because of all the things we've talked about, like landlords exiting the market, and people are staying longer in their rental properties now. We're not seeing as much churn. Obviously, finding it more difficult to get onto the property ladder.
Yeah.
So rents have been going up and up and up and up. And if landlords are increasingly finding it more difficult to make money, basically,
It's business,
from
right?
it,
It is a business.
then they're going to sell, which is going to increase.
It'll be offloaded.
So the levels of stock in the private sector are going to go down even more, which is going to increase rents even further. So I know that part of the rents reform bill, going off at a bit of a tangent,
That's right.
rents reform bill, which Michael Gove was leading on before he got sacked, but now he's back in. He's got a lot of critics, and rightly so. Apparently, he was actually working very, very swiftly. Next change of government on the rent reform bill, trying to get things moving. He's now obviously back as Housing Communities Levelling Up Secretary.
Right.
So he's going to pick it up again. One of the things he wants to do is big effort towards getting more properties into the private rented sector.
Okay.
Not quite sure how he's going to do it yet, but there's a big push.
Maybe there's a future episode where I could invite some people from the government to come have a conversation openly about this. Sort of,
You'd end up going another 24 hours.
It could be another 24-hour live performance.
I'm not available that.
Yeah. Well, so there's a great question in the comments which I'm going to come on to, but I just want to stay more from so let's stay with I want to be on the selling question and the buying question. So there's an opportunity in there. So there's a question. So we had a question here for first-time buyers. So actually, as a first-time buyer, will there be opportunities to buy in the future? Is the question. And I think this is around. Let's start with Jack and then work our way around on that.
I think, of course, will be. I think going back to what Darren just said, if it then causes a lot of the landlords to start offloading, it'll be a ripple effect where the first-time buyers will get back onto the ladder, and then that will then start reducing the chains amongst the different houses.
Yeah.
And so on. So I think there'll be lots of opportunities coming.
So the ladders will start building again.
Start building ladders and start
And
building.
then who knows what sort of schemes come up, you
Yeah.
know, through the powers that be that come to
I mean,
support
at the
that.
moment, sorry, go ahead.
No, you can't.
I was going to say, first-time buyers at the moment at the moment have got the stamp duty relief, which is now 400. You don't pay any stamp duty on the first 425.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, isn't it?
Which is
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah.
But the Help to Buy scheme, which is being phased out,
But none of this has been reversed yet then?
it's not been reversed. It was always a plan to phase it out by a
Okay.
certain date. So
Help to Buy stamp duty's there, but
that's
That's fine. That's
yeah.
That's one thing that's
The Help to
staying.
Buy scheme for first-time buyers, if you're buying a new home, the equity loan scheme, I believe, is being phased out on Halloween. So that your last applications, if anybody is looking to get an application in for a Help to Buy scheme on a new property, you got until Monday basically
Scary.
to get your application in. Scary. Very good, very good. So yeah, there's still a bunch of schemes for first-time buyers out there.
And there'll be more. There'll always be that.
But hopefully, yeah, there'll be more coming forward and then more stock for them to choose from.
Okay. No, good. Okay, like it. Okay, so I got a good question, which actually alludes to some of the conversation with you. I was surprised about the 6-month, 12-month thing with the landlords. So it's a great question here from Claire. So as estate agents, why do you encourage your landlords to stick to 6 months leases? Tenants need security too, and having to pay for the renewal plus an increase every 6 months is awful, especially at the moment. So that's a great question, a really direct question.
I think the short answer is we don't really nowadays. I think it's something. 6-month tenancies were much more common pre-pandemic, definitely. And bluntly, a lot of the time that was done because there's a fee that can be generated from the work of renewing the tenancy. Genuine fee because there is work and it's not just photocopying a bit of paper.
No.
There's more to it than that.
No doubt.
But people are staying longer now, and generally, if I was to say off the top of my head, in this last year, our tenancy renewals, I'd probably say 80-90% of them are 12-month tenancies, whereas before pre-pandemic, it would probably be at 50-50, 6 or 12 months.
But then with the pressures of the unknown, will that actually then force more 6 months because they don't know what the cost is going to be, or come back to what we were talking about a lot of the time, just being real, like. I'd rather be real and say, well, there is a risk of it.
Well, going forward,
again,
going back to Michael Gove, we're going to be scrapping 6 and 12 month tenancies.
Right, fine. So if that happens, then that resolves that problem for that person. And
the government are scrapping Section 21 eviction notices, which we can talk about later if you like. And basically, the idea is to move everyone onto a periodic rolling contract.
Okay.
They're trying to encourage people to stay longer in properties and have longer tenancies. The idea is that again, and also give tenants a bit more reassurance, so that tenants will at any point be able to just give 2 months' notice on the property if they want to leave, whereas landlords won't just be able to serve Section 21 eviction notice for no fault eviction for no reason. There will need to be certain specific reasons that landlords will be able to give notice.
so at a human level, which is, and I know you all personally, I know that you're a citizen, you're a human first before you're anything. That's a good thing for us as a community to know that there's going to be more regulation, more support for the individual, which is what that's.
It is. It is, as long as it's fair for both tenant and landlord, I think.
Of course, otherwise you've got no market.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a balancing act,
Yeah.
a constant balancing act. Okay, interesting. Let's have let's come down to staying with the tenant side of things. Landlord wants to put the rent up. What can the tenant do? Is it, the landlord has, there's a conversation that has to be had.
I think.
What can the tenant realistically do?
This whole thing about the whole thing is, because of the cost of living crisis that we're in at the moment.
Yeah.
Biggest piece of advice we could give if tenants are struggling to meet a new rent demand or the current rent demand, if the landlord's not putting it up, is open communication with us and with the landlord for us if we're managing the property, or if not, if you're doing it privately, speak to the landlord. Yeah. We knew when the pandemic started, the first hit, we thought, shit, we're going to get a lot of rent arrears. And I think I was looking at our figures, and so about 750 properties, we had 48 went into rent arrears during COVID when it was at its peak. But we saw it was coming. When we could see it was coming, we wrote to all of our tenants and all of our landlords saying, first of all, our tenants saying, if you're going to get into difficulty, let us know, open the conversation, and we can speak to the landlords. As long as they know early about it, it's going to be a much easier conversation to have. And out of those 48 properties that went into arrears, I think I checked with our accounts manager today, and she said we've got one left who's still just paying off their plan. But the majority of landlords, although they get a really bad reputation nationally, majority of landlords said, fine, let's put into place a payment plan, or if you're only getting 80% of your salary, we'll just charge you 80% of your rent. Do it for 3-6 months. And it was amazing how many landlords, just through open dialogue, said, okay, I get it. You're a good tenant, I want to keep hold of you.
It's interesting, because I think that was quite a nice. I thought it was quite a nice surprise on many levels during the pandemic. Obviously, it's never nice if you're in that situation, but if you'd be surprised if you speak to anyone who's charging you anything. It's in their interest. Coming back to the point around stability earlier, it's in their interest to work with you and support you. So it's about engaging in a meaningful way. Are there, to the point I asked about education, it comes back down to education. Are there kind of hard and fast rules around what they can demand and what they can't demand, and where can they find that information?
Well, like I said,
you talked about
the first thing is if a landlord wants to put up the rent, the tenant has to agree it. Otherwise, if they don't, then even the tenancy won't get extended beyond its current contract.
At least and you can start.
Just find somewhere else to live, and be served notice. Or they can negotiate and just try to negotiate and say, look.
They're your options, basically.
They're your two options, really. And if you're a tenant and you don't want to pay the rent for whatever reason, or you can't pay the rent, and and the council are telling you to stay put, which is what they will do if you can't pay the rent, or if you're just not meeting it, they haven't got anywhere to house you generally, so they will tell you to stay put. Then you have to go through the eviction notice system, which will then go into court, try and get judgments, get possession back.
It's a bit messy.
So it can take months and can cost a lot of money. Obviously, it's not very good for tenants in terms of they would want to rent in the future. So we try to mediate as best as we can on all levels before getting into.
So communicate.
That's the same.
That's a very short answer to my waffle.
No, it's true. But
And it's the same
Did
with
you say
lenders.
so?
it's good fun being a middleman, isn't it?
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm the curious guy. I'm the curious entrepreneur. What can I say?
That's the job.
So you
be a middleman.
I know.
Two people.
It's challenging, isn't it? Of course, it comes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's about education. It's about being human.
Communication is king. It's the same with lenders. If you find that you're struggling with your current mortgage payment or the new mortgage payment on a new deal, it's exactly the same. Communicate with your lender. They'll have plans in place. They might allow payment holidays. They're not magicians, but if you do communicate, the same with the landlord, they will look to help. I think they've got a duty of obligation to help as well. But you need to communicate, because if you leave it too late and suddenly you're 3 months in arrears, then you get those nasty letters coming through the door. But if you're on the phone to customer support, and they will be pretty staffed in these conditions, they'll work something out. It's in their interest, and I think they're regulated to do
and they're brands, like they've got to maintain that
They're a brand, but they're also banks as well.
Yeah,
So
Would they
there's-
potentially offer payment plans?
they can offer payment plans. They can offer potentially payment holidays. Depends on your
Would that be for
circumstances.
landlords as well? Or-
I'm not sure for landlords, Tim. I'll be honest. I'm not sure. I'm guessing that would be
Nobody
slightly
likes
different because
landlords,
it's
so you
not.
might think
It's
they might
not so.
That's why you
withdraw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Buy-to-let mortgages aren't regulated, you see, compared to residential mortgages. So
Right.
residential mortgages are governed by the
right.
Financial Conduct Authority,
Okay.
and buy-to-let aren't. So I would hazard a guess is the answer probably not on that.
Interesting.
Okay, good. So we've got enough time for another
I didn't know
couple of
that. I learn
questions.
something new every day.
So again, some more practical questions really around the tenants being, more increasingly picky about the property they're renting. So are tenants becoming more picky based on kind of energy circumstances?
Yeah,
So
we're seeing that.
I can imagine, and that's probably not even just from an energy point of view. They just care about sustainability more as well. Like so,
We're
Yeah.
seeing that even when people are buying.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, whereas before, I don't think a lot of people actually took much notice of what the energy performance certificate was. But now they are.
So that's really important. So it's more of a factor in the buying decision.
I think you're right. It is part bills and part general awareness of
Actually
the environment. Yeah.
I have a question on this, a bit off. It's still on housing. Why don't they build houses? So if we move into net zero, why are they not building all new houses net zero day one? Like
They're probably
they're
starting.
going to have to, because they're going to have to retrofit the buildings they're building now.
I don't know the answer to that either. Maybe there is a guideline to get to that net zero by a
Is it
sector,
just
but I
because
don't know.
the way we've done it is the way we've always done it, and now we're going to carry on?
There's some brilliant,
It's amazing
brilliant
technology.
examples on the continent of,
I know.
of how to build homes.
Mhm.
Modular building, whether it's
Or ITF,
modern methods of construction.
It's mad to me. It's mad to me. If we're going to have to store electric on the house, why haven't we got electric storage built into the house when we start now? Anyway, maybe we should get someone in construction here next time, Darren.
This could be another one of your ideas, Alex.
Well, yeah.
But you're in terms of
But the question, sorry.
Tenants-
Do people care about it more now?
tenants or-
That's my fault. I went on.
tenants or buyers when they're looking for properties, increasingly looking at how the house is heated and insulated, and if you're a landlord, you're thinking, how can I get more interest in my property, or are there some things I should be doing? I've had this property since the 1980s. Should I be doing something to it to try and increase the popularity or to increase the rent?
Yeah, maybe set a plan.
Definitely look at your heating. A lot of our property stock. Instantly, I'm going to be really local here now.
Yeah.
Typical landlord fodder properties down at Parklands, Lindisfarne Close, somewhere places up on Begwary or Fallow Drive up in Eton Ford. Those 1 or 2 bed cluster homes, great landlord fodder, but they were built in the 80s, and a lot of them have still got the original kitchens, the original bathrooms, and landlords, by and large, don't want to spend a lot of money doing the properties up. The difference you'll get in the quality of tenant is huge if you have a really nice place to live. It doesn't have to. You have to spend a lot of money, but get rid of the old night storage heaters, and put in electric panel heaters, which you can set with. You can be at work in London and set your phone to make sure this and that. The technology doesn't have to cost a lot of money, but the quality of the tenant that you would potentially get in far outweighs.
And it's the best back to stability, because if you've got to save money somewhere, then if you know they're not spending money on their energy, then it's not such a hard conversation to put the rent up, right?
Okay, yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. I just thought I'd start there. Okay. So last question on the tenants side of things. So what help out there? What help is there to support my living at the cost of everything is going up? So beyond the conversation with your landlord, just some general points around. I think engage with your community and your community services. If you are in that situation, engage with people like citizens advice and things like that for sure. But
food banks, obviously.
Yeah, which is something
massively oversubscribed.
Blimey, the stats around that. I mean, I know obviously you've got your
3 pillars.
3 pillars as well. That you must have some insight. Just on some insights on that. Are they getting more?
Well, that's changing. The 3 pillars feeding the homeless. It's still there on the homeless, but it's actually moved a lot more to the local community.
Yeah, I was going to say. I thought there was a bit of man
delivering food bags to more of the vulnerable and the needy and the aged. So yeah, I mean, that is without a doubt going to be increasing. And we're lucky within that charity. I'll speak on behalf of the trustees that a lot of the local supermarkets, the Aldi's, the Tesco's, the Greggs, they are great providers for the charity
really
for stuff that they can't sell the next day or long dated, short dated food. So yeah, I mean, that without a doubt is going to be a lot bigger, and there's going to be a lot more demand and pressure on those type of services, because again, when we get down to this, there's not enough money to pay everything. Something has to give.
Yeah, and that's the reality of the situation. But there's no, and that's why again it's so important that we have conversations in safe spaces. I'm not saying plaster it on comments on lives like this, but have safe conversations. Speak to each other. Yeah.
So you think, for what you were saying earlier, Darren, we're going to see a shift just as a nation towards a change in people's habitual habits, habitual spending, in terms of people get used to being in on a Friday night or a Saturday night.
Well, look at the high street, man.
I've seen it myself, and I'm sure we all have here. We have been blessed over the last few years with disposable income, and if that is being dwindled away, or it's less, something has to give. And the going out, if you were going out, it's all relative again, but if somebody was going out once a week, that might be once a month now. If you're going out once a month, that might be down to watching a Netflix movie at home. So people will have to make, and I've said it a lot to my team, the word sacrifices. People are having to make sacrifices just to stay afloat.
Yeah, and then there's two sides of that. With my other,
I was just about to say, it's not all doom and gloom though, is it? Because you can create additional.
And there's opportunities in that. On that side of things, obviously the hospitality industry is on its knees because of that. They had a lot of support during the pandemic, 5% VAT.
Eat out to help out.
Yeah, I think that was great. I'm not going to talk about that. But the 5% VAT was we need to see proactiveness from policymakers. We can't be waiting around anymore. We've waited long enough. We need to see action around that side of things. I was having a chat with one of our local cafes. I like to speak. High Street's my game. I like to understand what's going on the ground. And to that point, with your point, he said, "Well, I've got to put my prices up because my energy bills have gone up like crazy. Businesses aren't as covered as you've got buildings as well, properties. I know you're a commercial property as well. Like they have to put the prices up, and so they're putting the price of a cup of tea up 40p." And the customers are coming. They used to come out 3 times a week, and they're coming out 1 time a week. So, that we really need to start. I personally feel like we really need to start seeing this as a community issue. All of these things are a melting pot of things, and we've got to start working collaboratively to start to drive the economy up. Because St Neots is an amazing town. Like we've got a good opportunity here as a bubble. We could create a bubble for ourselves if we were proactive enough. Where we can protect all of that and actually, support a lot of that.
I think that's a big wish, and everyone here would want that.
Yeah.
But I think in reality, it's probably too much.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard, but that's what we're about to go to. My view is hard times requires an extra effort.
Of course.
Let's find.
But we're talking, whilst we're talking these numbers, and obviously there is a negative element to this. When I put that spin on things, I'm talking of maybe 80% of the people will be affected. I feel maybe only 20% of the people will get through what we're going through. And again, they'll still be making sacrifices, but they'll come out the other side. But the majority, which is, it's the famous 80-20 rule, the majority of people will have to take some pain, I think.
Yeah. And I just think if we can do that together, then it's a lot easier. I think. So I was in school the other day with our accountants. We do a lot of financial literacy conversations with young people. And I asked the question in the room. There's about 60 year 12s, 17-year-olds. And I asked the question about budgeting. So I said, out of the room, how many put your hand up if you budget? If you're educated on how to budget and think about, put 10% in here, and I put savings and make hay while the sun shines, and indexing and whatever else. 5%. Hands went up.
Yeah, that's probably, but the art of budgeting has probably been lost over the last few years.
It's not a conversation.
No, it's a great thing to do, and I've helped many people with mortgages.
More in the schools.
So you know, if you know you're having a good time. Yeah, I sold at the time. I forecast. I have a forecast because I budget. So that's why entrepreneurship's a good subject to talk about, because it teaches you these things. You know how to budget, because that's you sent me. I was away on holiday, and you sent me a voice note with the letter that you got from your school, your teacher, your maths results.
With my school report.
Your school report.
You haven't got much chance in life there.
And it was based on those maths results, and yet the guy's running mortgage broker. So education. I just want to finish on that point.
As a community, as
what can we do as brands?
Employers,
can we educate our employees? Can we educate our community?
Yeah, we can certainly try to support and educate community in the specialist areas that we work in.
Yeah.
And I think as a community, if you are concerned about cost, the simple art of doing a budget, which I have no problem helping people with on my teamwork, just writing down, looking at your bank statements. We see these every day in the course of a mortgage application, so you get to see what people spend money on. It's quite scary.
So easy now with the apps.
Oh my days!
That's
it's ridiculous. And if once you write it down and you say, right, this is what you take home per month, this is what you spend per month, then you can list it: mortgage, gas, electric, cost of coffee, and all these things, and you suddenly can see. You can suddenly see that you're spending. There are, but once you actually do that very simple exercise, and a lot of this is head in the sand. People don't like seeing what they spend money, and that's probably 90% of the population. But you write it down, you go through your bank statement, you'll be surprised with what savings you can make when you need to.
Hopefully pleasantly, because then you can actually make those decisions.
Yeah, you can start.
So we've got to start the conversation. So where we started was education. I think it's a good place to finish. So do we have any? So let's talk about just a tip, a kind of a parting tip for whether it be a finance thing, whether it be a housing thing, whether it be a life thing. Just something that you think that's a great advice. Write it down, analyze it. Anyone else got? Do you want to go around any kind of life tips
for me
on that?
Shall I start?
Yeah, go for it, Jack. Jump straight in.
I'll stick with the housing. I'll stick with what I know.
Yeah.
I think that boils down to talking, keep asking the questions about what's going on in the general market as a whole, and that would be the only advice I would give. I mean, there's no crystal ball at the minute of where it's going to go, but at the same time, it's not all doom and gloom. There's going to be people there who need to move still, so keep talking would be my advice.
Nice, that's good. Yeah, keep talking. Good. What about you, Tim?
That was actually mine. I was just going to say communicate, and whether it's speaking to us as professionals about your personal situation, if you're clients of ours already, or if you're not a client of ours, or you have no intention of being a client of ours, or you just live locally, just want to come have a chat to us about it, whether you go down to the mortgage broker, to Pirie Homes, and come and see us.
Right.
We've all got offices. I'm sure we'd all be happy just to come in and you can chew our ear for 20 minutes, half an hour, and trying to allay some of the fears that you might have, really, and tell you what's happening locally and look at your personal circumstance and see where we can help. But if you don't talk, it's the same with mental health. If you don't talk about it,
it's asking questions.
If you don't talk about it, then you keep it all bottled in, and you're none the wiser.
Cool. Okay.
So it's not, unfortunately, it's not a technical tip.
No, that's fine. But and I'll layer on that to say, go one step further and ask your neighbour how they do it. Actually just put your weapon to putting your head over the fence and saying, "You're all right, mate. You're okay, mate." We've got to look after each other. I think once you've got your option, when you've done your budget, you've talked about it, and you've got some advice, look at that. Bring it around. Do this for living, right? Then share that information. Ask other people if they're okay, and then we can actually stimulate a conversation that's healthy and productive and supportive. Well, look, thank you so much for this, and Darren, thanks you for actually setting up and
thanks for
sending the voice note out. What an idea, and but it's a good idea, and I'm glad we did it.
It's normally panic when you get one of them from Darren.
Yeah, I know, right? I usually get random ideas because he's an entrepreneur at heart. So
did you get my message?
Yeah, exactly. So thanks guys. This has been great.
Thank you, Alex.
I think it's fantastic, and again, But please do follow the brands. They're going to be posting some more educational content in the coming weeks and months around some of this conversation.
We actually have a Property Unlocked series on YouTube, which talks about things like we covered gazumdering, negative equity, stuff like that. We talk a lot of crap about various property jargon. But
so maybe on the back of this, jump on the comments of the Facebook Live, because that's the main places we're going to live. And put those links in, and if you guys want to put any links into your brands, let's give these guys a follow. Support our local businesses. They've put, like I said at the start, they put their swords down for a moment and come in here to collaborate and have a conversation, which is wonderful. I think
let's grab a beer.
And let's grab a beer. And then from St Neots Initiative point of view, look, we've been set up for a reason. We're here to support the town become a better place to live, work, and play. We're trying to stimulate a conversation locally at the moment to support our businesses from a jobs point of view and a residents from a jobs point of view. We got some community awards that we're coming to the town soon to bring people together and celebrate the individuals in our town, the amazing people that work in your businesses that have been living here and doing the things locally. And we're starting to build those human connections that are needed locally during a time that might just well be, if we believe in Darren's forecast, and we've recorded it, then make sure that we're supporting each other. I think that's just a really important point. So check out sneersinitiative.org.uk, and we'll be back soon with more like this.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Alex.